Hey y'all, it is Monday, September the 19th, I think, 2022. I just wanted to do a financial update as the Fed FOMC meeting is going to be this Wednesday, and they likely are going to be raising the federal funds rate, probably 75 basis points. Some believe it could be a full percentage point, in which case I would think that the markets would be very surprised. I think that there would be probably a pretty significant sell-off if that happens. If we get the 75 basis point hike, I think that's already baked into the market. The markets usually get word of what the Fed is going to do, and the markets move in such a way where everything gets baked in before the meeting. So 75 basis points is baked in. A full percentage point is not, and could cause a bit of volatility. So we'll see what's going to happen. The Feds are meeting on Tuesday and Wednesday, I believe. Wednesday will probably be that rate decision announcement. And then Fed Chair Powell speaks, and all the questions are planned. You know, nobody asks a question that isn't already written for him. Everything is written, everything is planned. He's told what to say. Questions are all planned. So when he does speak, whatever that dialogue is will also move the market. So if we get the 75 basis point hike, I believe that the dollar is going to drop and everything else, all other assets will probably rise initially. But if what he says afterwards is very hawkish and he, continues to be very strong on quantitative tightening, then we don't get a Fed pivot, which is the Fed turning around and starting to print again and not tighten. If he becomes dovish and starts to say that they may start printing again, everything's going to rally, and we are going to begin to see the death of the dollar very quickly. Probably smart to have some precious metals on hand. I had done a financial video and I deleted it for a few reasons, and I just wanted to reiterate it because there were a few people actually who asked me if I could repost it. And I'm not going to repost that video, but I'm just going to share on some of the things. I took a few little notes, and I was getting tired of listening to myself, so I only got through like a third of the video, but I just took some notes on what I was talking about, and I'll just reiterate some of that stuff. And I'm just basically here sharing my journey, the voice of the Holy Spirit to me, and about the financial and world system, world events, and what that has to do with world awakening and our personal awakening and our deepening into the reality and consciousness of the spiritual walk that we're in God. My journey includes the falling away of religion in a very great way, the crumbling of that world pillar inside of me and in my life. The world system, as we know, encompasses many different pillars that are all pillars of deception: governments, finance, banking, cartels, religion, medicine and health, Hollywood, media. We could go on and on. The financial system is a quantum machine. It is a beast. I do understand its language, but I wouldn't teach it. I was saying this on the other video. It is a language that must be immersed in on a daily basis. And I did spend a significant number of years sitting in front of 9 or 10 screens, watching all of the different currencies and assets and commodities and stocks and futures markets and forex markets move in coordination with the beast machine. And that's how I learned the language, watching the news, watching the Fed, watching, learning about all this stuff. I was immersed in it, lost a lot of sleep. I don't want to lose any more sleep over it. I was explaining that there are algorithms that drive the markets. There are HFTs, which are high frequency trading machines that run the market. They are run by the banking cartels and, the big banks, the big central banks. They have these machines. There's tons of them. You can look it up. Just type in HFT and you'll see these high frequency trading machines, and they're trading all day long, and they're making millions as they're trading while the algorithms are baked in and real traders are trading, getting taken for their shirt and pants. On my awakening path, I came across the understanding that the markets follow astrology. And that's where there was like a transition in my, awakening path. And that deepened my understanding that this whole world system is connected to, everything is connected quantumly, spiritually. The Bible, I began to see so much astrology in the Bible, and I did search and look for it because I was taught in my religion that astrology was evil. It was occult, and there definitely can be an occultic side to astrology. And I don't seek to interpret astrology. I began to understand it a little bit, general idea, what these electromagnetic forces in the firmament, how they have an effect on the electromagnetism of our beings, which are also quantumly in a dynamic with the universe. And I've given that example about the moon and how it affects, we see it affect the waters, right? And we're able to see that with our eyes, and yet we're mostly made up of water. And salt. And what do we think it's doing to our cellular, the fluid in and out of the cell membrane, and in our body and in our organs and in our brains and throughout our whole system? Do we think it's having an effect on our body? It sure is. And how a moon cycle is menstrual cycle. It's all connected. Words are all have meaning. It's all connected. Keep digging. But yeah, moon cycle, menstrual cycles, 28 days. It's all connected. It's actually fascinating and blows the mortal mind. But again, I'll just say this about astrology. I do not seek to interpret it, though I, have some understanding of it now. I lean on the voice of the Holy Spirit. Astrology is a dynamic indicator and confirming factor of what God is doing through the world system and in the earth and in us personally. It definitely is fascinating. But there is that temptation to want to make things work through the astrology, or think that, things are going to happen a certain way, or think that things should happen a certain way, or want to try to implement certain changes in oneself through the astrology, which I would not tap into. The Bible speaks, I think of Daniel, the book of Daniel, especially when I think of astrology, and how Daniel was brought to the king because he was above reproach. He was such a spiritual man. And his pals, Daniel and his pals were brought, and so were the astrologers, and so were, the basically the sorcerers. Like they all were brought to the king when the king had a dream. And I think it happened with Joseph too. When the king had a dream about 8 years, was it 7 years or 8 years of famine, of plenty, and 7 years of famine to follow. And I think we are in a very similar time right now, where we've had 14 years of quantitative easing, which means printing up of fiat currency. We've had 14 years, like actually a double portion of false money creation. We've had 14 years, a double portion of that dream of the feds printing up the money supply. And now we are heading into probably at least 7 years of famine, of tightening, of clamping down, of difficulty, struggle, of not of plenty. And we're going to have to trust God and really tap into God and press into God very deeply. But when Daniel and Joseph were brought at their different, in their different stories to the king to interpret the dreams, they also brought the astrologers. I believe it happens in both of these stories. And the astrologers could not interpret the dreams. And I think, it's just shown throughout the Bible, even though we know, like with the wise men, they saw the star, that's all astrology and it's all truth. The astrology is real. It's real. However, I lean on the voice of the Holy Spirit. That has been the way that I have walked with God for many decades now, and I will continue to walk with God and just lean on the voice of the Holy Spirit and the power of the Holy Spirit. But I do recognize the confirmation of the astrology, both in the, the light and the dark, the yin and the yang. The world system exemplifies the manifestation of things that happen that are reflected through the energies of the astrology. And the Holy Spirit, to me, when I look at the astrology, I see all of the manifold wisdom of God. I see the aspects of the Holy Spirit at work, like the comforter, the corrector, the instructor, the teacher, the transformer, the power of God, the gentleness of God, the creative power of God. It's like that's what the whole astrology is. And so the Holy Spirit, this is what we see through astrology, is all the aspects of the Holy Spirit at work in the earth, in the universe. That's really how I see it. But I don't lean on it, and I don't interpret it. And I don't seek to do that. And I don't believe I ever will. I will lean on the voice of the Holy Spirit and continue to do that as I have in my life. So I just wanted to say that about astrology. But there is respect for that, for those energies, and they are incorporated into everything that's going on quantumly and in the spirit around us, and certainly affecting even our bodies and the energies of everything. So I wanted to just explain that in case anyone had a question about that, about me. But then if you look, there's just so much, 12 tribes, 12 houses, 12 disciples, 12 is the number of government. There's just so much that we could look and see on quantum levels, the deepening of the understanding of how the astrology is reflected in the Bible. It's all over the place. So I do look at it differently now. So that's what I want to say. We are heading into the FOMC meeting this week, and we are probably going to see volatility. Oftentimes it's baked in, as I said, and then we normally see after a couple of days or next week, things really take a trend. And so we should start seeing whatever trend, whatever direction we're going, or if we're going to continue in the same direction that we're going, where the equities markets are selling off, crypto selling off, all other currencies are selling off against the dollar. If that trend is going to continue next week, if it's going to continue into next month, I would say that we would start seeing that trend next week. I wouldn't really go by what we see on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Maybe by Friday, the trend will settle in, but I would go more on what we see next week as to looking at forward trends of what's going to happen. But, a lot of people believe that the Fed is going to pivot, that they can't actually continue to tighten and continue to raise rates because mathematically the system will lock up. And so there's all these different options of what's going to happen. Is the system going to lock up? Is there going to be a credit freeze? Is all fiat currencies going to go to zero? Is there going to be a debt forgiveness? And I don't mean the debt forgiveness for us people, us little nobodies. I'm talking about government debt forgiveness. The debt that the central banks have accrued, they will just wipe it all away and start on a whole new system. Will that happen? Will there be a continued tightening and deflationary contraction of the markets, and they'll let the markets crash and people will lose their 401ks and their retirements? Will that happen? That's an option as well. So there's a lot of different options here that could happen, and nobody really knows how it's all going to play out. We're on the precipice of this very grand event in history. We've never been here before. We have never been at this type of a reset before. And I was talking also about UBI, which, could be something considered the mark of the beast. UBI is universal basic income. And it is what may happen is they may basically offer us the solution, which is, if they shut down the system or they create such a hardship on the people, especially the middle class, we will cry out for a solution. And they already have the solution, which is UBI, Universal Basic Income. They've already made FedNow accounts for all Americans with a social security number. That is a digital account where they would deposit an allowance, and according to our social scores and our behavior in being compliant with the system, we would be allowed this allowance from the feds. We all do have a FedNow account if we're from America, and it's just a matter of time that these accounts will be put into place. Many people are really, really struggling. I'm just really feeling that word struggle. I'm feeling that word struggle, and it's time to really get out of our delusions, to acknowledge our delusions. And it's not going to be comfortable for all of us. I'm not coming from a place of know-it-all. I am just at the mercy of God, and I'm laying down at the throne saying, God, please hunker me down at your throne, hunker me down, Lord, because the waves are kicking up, and we are going, we can sense, I was talking to somebody on the phone today, and it just, we can sense the wave, the wind. We can sense the wind over the water. If you're a boater or a sailor, you can sense the wind of the weather. It's kicking up. The winds are kicking up. And when you're out there on the water and you're kind of like not near land and you start seeing the winds kick up, a storm's coming, and you're like, I better get to shore. But we are not going to be able to really get to shore, so to speak. We need to hunker down in the boat. We're going to need to, the waves are going to kick up. We're going to feel the waves intensify, and the waves are going to begin to reveal our deceptions and delusions. We no longer will be able to cover them or just kind of float around freely in our delusions. It's going to get intense. It's going to get intense for all of us. And we need to hunker down. And for me, hunker down means lay down at the throne with my face down before the throne and just give God these deceptions, give God these delusions, give God these things he's showing me in my face, and not deny them anymore. Give God my fears, give God my apprehensions, give God my my control. Give God my control. Give God my need to know, my need to know what's going to happen, this is definitely something I'm laying down. Yeah, this is a work that's happening inside of me right now. And, Lord, as I lay that down, would you give me more trust? Would you give me more faith to obey you, Lord, more faith to stay rested in you, more faith to believe you at your word, more faith to trust you that you will take care of my needs, God, and I will be okay, and I'll be safe in you. And just, to receive God's love and truth in that dynamic at the throne of God, hunkering down at the throne, hunkering down with God in the storm that's, beginning to unsettle us again, and this next phase of awakening is really going to be, I believe, much more intense than the last in a lot of ways. So it is upon us, and I think just, whatever the Lord is showing us to do right now, and whatever God is really revealing to us and exposing to us is key, that we need to stay there with God and surrender that thing to God, acknowledge it, acknowledge that we cannot change ourselves, that we cannot save ourselves, and that we just call out to God, and stay hidden in him and in his presence with his spirit. And, I believe just all, the idols are falling. The pillars of the world system are falling, and the idols are falling off the pillars. The idols are falling off our personal pillars. The idols are falling. Anything we put ahead of God's will, anything we put above God's law, God's face, God's presence, God's love, everything we put above and denied is falling off, the pedestal. in our lives. And that is a good thing, because, when the storm comes, we're not going to hold on to that thing. That thing is just going to flying away in the waves as well. And God's like, that thing ain't going to save you. We read about these idols in the Bible, how those idols, would fall off the pedestals and off the Asherah poles and all that, all the idolatry would come down. But like, we have these idols in our lives, and there's just so many of them. I'm not even going to begin to name them, just so many of them. But I think a lot of what God is dealing with as far as idolatry right now has to do with codependency in relationships, has to do with fear and finance, has to do with, for me, a lot of religion, status. I think God is really dealing with us in status and our image, how we portray ourselves, what people think of us, how we present ourselves out there to everybody, and wanting that to just appear a certain way with the masks and all that stuff. Is just, the masks are just going to float away in this storm. They're just going to float away. And the longer we try to hold on to those masks, we're giving our energy away to holding on to the masks, to the image, to the status, to the position, to the what we portray to others. When God is like, don't waste your energy on that, because that mask is just going to get completely disintegrated in the storm, in the waves. It's going to be taken away, and washed away with the waves. So don't even try to keep holding it on to you. And so these are the things I really feel the Holy Spirit putting a finger upon, and I believe it is a collective word. So that's my update today. God bless you, give you more grace, give us more grace as we lay down and hunker down at the throne of God, in the boat with the Lord, around the throne, in worship and in surrender of our darkness and everything the Holy Spirit is revealing to us right now. So much love.